Let me ask you folks a question. Will we ever hear a full-throated defense of free market capitalism again? I mean, it's the only economic system on the face of the earth that's created more wealth for more people than any other system. And it just happens to be a system that works hand in glove with liberty, individual liberty. And yet it's never defended. Instead, what's defended is the New Deal, entitlements, tax increases, more regulations, more spending, the minimum wage, income redistribution. So let's take a little bit of time and analyze this stuff. First, I want you to hear Mitt Romney. Now, his strength was supposed to be he's a businessman. Well, Herbert Hoover was a businessman, too, and more on him in a moment. And he was a Republican, too. More on him in a moment. The minimum wage. I hear a couple of candidates who want to be president, who wanted to be president. They also have been defending the minimum wage. I'm here to make a full-throated assault against it because I have compassion for low-skilled workers. Because I have compassion for blue-collar workers, because I have compassion for young people, I am going to make a full-throated attack on the minimum wage. Apart from the questionable legal authority for the federal government to impose it on the entirety of the nation. That aside. So here's Mitt Romney on the morning schmo on MSLSD today. Cut 6, go.
I, for instance, as you know, part company with many of the conservatives in my party on the issue of the minimum wage. I think we ought to raise it because, frankly, our party is all about more jobs and better pay. I think communicating that is important to us.
I'm sorry, folks. This is truly pathetic. Our party's for more jobs and better pay. Now, we've had the minimum wage, well, since FDR, actually since Herbert Hoover, when he threatened businessmen, which I'll get to in a moment. But I want us to walk through this. If the minimum, if the minimum wage is set by government, and let's say it's set at $10.10 an hour, whatever it is, then anyone whose work or skills or experience do not warrant such a wage will be fired. And that determination will be made by their employer. So you're depriving someone who is employed or might be employed of a job. So employment is replaced with unemployment. Not only is there no living wage, as some describe it, there's no wage at all. And that creates a long list of problems for an individual, for a family, and society. Even if they get unemployment insurance, it cannot match the wage that they'd been earning previously. You might say, well, the business can simply charge a higher price for their product or service. That's not always the case. Some businesses are operating on very small margins. Some businesses will move their production to places where the costs are more manageable, such as the Third World or China, or even industrialized nations that provide more attractive labor and business environments. Some consumers will purchase products manufactured overseas instead of domestically because the price might be cheaper. Or the consumer might purchase less of the product or service that's produced here at home. All of this drags down domestic employment and growth. The minimum wage kills jobs, kills businesses. But what about those businesses that can digest an increase, you might say, a mandated minimum wage? Well, they're still very unlikely to maintain current employment levels, or at least are unlikely to increase employment levels. But it also means, let's take it as an example, places like fast food restaurants or Walmart where many low-income people go to eat and buy products, the costs for those low-income people will increase, making their lives more difficult for them as individuals and their families. It'll be harder to make ends meet. And let me add this point. If an employee can earn more in another job or with another business, they would have already sought out those options, unless they are comfortable where they are presently employed and enjoy it, or for some other reason don't want to move. So there's just no denying, as a matter of logic and experience, that the minimum wage destroys jobs and opportunities. It is, in fact, destructive of the very people its proponents claim to care about. So when Romney goes on and says, hey, look, our party's about more jobs and better pay, you don't get more jobs and better pay through the minimum wage. You get the opposite. You get the opposite. Now, who are we talking about here? We're talking about 1.6 million Americans, and about 500,000 of those Americans are between the ages of 16 and 19. So we're talking about 1.1 million Americans over the age of 19. And I've read reports that a minimum wage of the sort that Obama is pushing will cost 400,000 to 500,000 of the 1.6 million jobs. So whose purpose does this serve? Why would we have a prominent Republican, a businessman, the 2012 presidential nominee of the Republican Party, who claimed to be a severe conservative? Why would he be arguing for this? And by the way, undermining members of Congress in his own party who've now put this to rest. And then he brings it up again. There's nothing compassionate about the minimum wage. There's nothing logical about the minimum wage.